So what are you charged with?
That's a really good question. I'm charged with being the head of an organized criminal group, which is in charge of recruiting girls to make TikTok videos to steal the money from the TikTok views.
Recruiting girls to make TikTok videos and stealing the money. So it's really a financial crime?
It looks that way, and it's very interesting because the girls who they've identified to add to the file are saying that we're not victims of anything, and this isn't true.
So in the United States, I think the belief is that you were charged with human trafficking.
Yeah, that's human trafficking because what you do is you force a girl to work against her will for financial gain. That's human trafficking, and their justification for this is that girls do TikTok. Some girls I know who they found who say they're not victims have TikTok accounts.
How do you force someone to do TikTok videos?
I guess the prosecutor is going to have to explain that, isn't he?
So there's just to be clear, you are not accused of pandering, of pimping, of forcing women to have sex with anybody.
No, not forcing them to have sex, not restraining their movement, not stopping them from living a full life.
I'm asking you this because I do think it's a widespread belief that you were accused of pimping.
Yeah, no, that's nothing to do with any of this case. Absolutely nothing. And it's kind of scary because the crime in itself of human trafficking is a unique one because they can ignore the statement of the victim. So the girls have come forward and said, this is insane. You've just picked us because we're near Andrew and we're his friends. But the whole idea of the crime is they can say that she's brainwashed, right? She's under duress. So you can ignore her statement. State says she's a victim regardless of the fact that she says she's not a victim. So it's scary. Imagine you're a full-grown man anywhere in the world today. They can find two girls who have TikTok on their phone, which is every single female on the planet, and they can accuse you of forcing them to take the TikTok money. And even if the girls say they didn't do that, this isn't true, then you're still a human trafficker.
But force, what does that consist of? Forcing someone to do something, are they accusing you of using violence or?
No, they're accusing me, and this is the thing, they're accusing me of using the lover boy method, coercing them by being nice.
And by the way, these charges presumably are public, so...
They're public, and this is extremely serious, but if you actually analyze the overall case against me, they're saying that Andrew and his brother, by being nice men, convinced girls to have TikTok accounts and then take the money. And it's very interesting because inside of the entire case file, there's not a single financial transaction to us for money.
What are the penalties?
They're extremely severe, 5 to 10 years in jail. And I've already served, coming up now, 7 months in a form of jail. They can only hold
So you are essentially incarcerated right now.
Absolutely, I'm on house arrest, and that counts as jail. You can only be held 6 months without charge. I was initially picked up, thrown in a cell without charge, and I think the intention of the entire investigation at that point was to find the crime because they had very, very weak evidence. They contacted 2,000 people who know me or knew me. They tried very hard to convince some female somewhere to come forward and say something bad about me. The media machine, which works hands in hands with the justice machine, as you know very well, did exactly that. In fact, they offered bribes effectively. They'd call up ex-girlfriends and say, if you have anything bad to say about Andrew, we can pay you $50,000 for the story. And they tried very hard. They didn't find any evidence of anything.
So how is the state, so the state is trying to coerce the women, so how is the state not committing human trafficking by the same definition?
Well, absolutely, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that you can sit someone down and tell them they're a victim when they say they're not a victim.
You're a victim of being coerced, and we're going to try to coerce you into conceding you were coerced.
Exactly, it's a very interesting scenario. And
okay. So you're in jail for 90 days or more, and the rest of the world is talking about you. Do you know what they're saying?
They're saying very heinous things, and I would hate to come across as a conspiracy theorist, Tucker, but I kind of have a feeling that this might be something to do with my influence and an attempt to slander my name. Perhaps I'm crazy, but the fact that they chose such a heinous crime and they reported it so heavily and they won't shut up and keep repeating basically a slander attack day after day after day. Also considering the fact that other people who genuinely commit heinous crimes have far more favorable press coverage. I don't want you to think I'm a conspiracy theorist. Please, Tucker, I would hate for you to come here and call me crazy. Yeah. But something very strange about it, and I think
What, when Jeffrey Epstein's friends call you immoral?
Yeah. The goal of it is certainly to slander my name, and I like to see it as a litmus test. I like to see it as an intelligence test. Anybody who wakes up and looks at me and goes, he's a human trafficker because of TikTok, they're fully gone.
So, but from the West, just to defend the average news consumer in the West.
Sure.
Andrew Tate, kind of an outlaw.
Yep.
lives in some palace in Romania, wherever that is. And and Romania sounds like the kind of place where human trafficking is like the main industry.
A lot of it happens here. That's what's so crazy about it, right? What's so crazy is if they really wanted to find a human trafficker, I think they could probably do it quite easily. But they managed to get me.
That's certainly the perception. But it's one of those charges that kind of sells itself.
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you're found guilty or not, right? You're a human trafficker forever. And but I do think that public consciousness is changing. I think with things like there's been some very large court cases recently involving some very famous people in which women were caught lying, trying to slander men's names for rape and these kinds of things. And I don't think people believe it anymore. But that scares me to a degree, because I think that the typical weapon, the standardized playbook, is now failing, and I don't know what the new playbook's going to be. It's almost like better the devil you know. You're too famous, you're too successful, we don't like you. Call him a rapist or a human trafficker, put him all over the news, slander his name, try and wreck his life. Now that nobody believes it, what's the next move? What are they going to try next?
Wouldn't it just have been easier to commit like a massive financial crime and defraud people of billions, come up with like a fake cryptocurrency, call it like, I don't know, FTX, or just give a name to it.
Something
random. Steal billions and get your parents involved and buy a bunch of real estate in the Bahamas, and then like you'd be sort of a hero, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I would have certainly made a lot more money than TikTok, because I don't think TikTok even pays you for views. And if it certainly does, I never got a single transaction from it. So it's a very interesting scenario. But if I was accused of a financial crime, my name would not be slandered. So
of course not. You have the presumption of innocence. What is it about your message, do you think, that infuriates certain people?
Well, my message is traditional masculinity. My message is to stand up and say what you mean and mean what you say. And even going to the gym nowadays is an act of defiance, because when you have a man who's built with any degree of principle, you say no to things. And I think if I have to analyze my message and why I'm so disliked by the people who dislike me, it's not the things I'm saying, it's the fact that if you adhere to my principles and you adhere to the things I say, you end up being the kind of person who will resist certain ideas. You say no. What kind of man never says no? Name a man who never says no. Men say no, right? Men wake up and say, no, I don't think that should be done this way. No, my children will not be taught that.
It's the father's primary job.
Absolutely. So when you say to men, listen, you're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to have standards. You're allowed to have boundaries and barriers. You're allowed to get up and become important and work hard and try hard and become the kind of man who can't be controlled. Then you're seen as an enemy. And especially with the massive influence I've gained, I think they look at me and go, he's helping men resist the slave programming. We don't need him around. We need to empty their brains so we can inject the slave programming and convince men to be eunuchs. Because once you're eunuched, then you're not a threat.